Welcome to Bloodbath and Beyond. Today I'll be reviewing Sugar Hill, Swedish sugar with a voodoo army of the undead. Directed by Paul Maslansky, starring Marki Bey, Don Pedro Colley, Robert Quarry, Richard Lawson, and Zara Cully. This movie is about Diana Sugar Hill. She's the co-owner of a nightclub that her and her boyfriend Langston own.
Hey, Langston, my man.
I ain't your man, boy.
He's not your buddy, friend.
Some mobsters show up and they want to own the place, but the couple refuses to sell. Unfortunately, Langston is jumped by the mobsters, who are donning the absolute worst disguises ever, considering they look exactly the same just with pantyhose on their head. They end up beating and killing Langston and leaving his body there for Sugar to find. Sugar obviously is distraught about this whole situation. She just lost her boyfriend and she wants to seek revenge, and she knows just the way to get it. So she goes to Mama.
You have come to see Mama Maitresse? Why?
A local voodoo priestess who calls upon Baron Samedi, who's there to help her take revenge, and he brings along with him his army of zombies. Now Sugar and her team seek revenge on the mobsters. It's pretty cut and dry. This is a recommendation from James Montgomery over on Patreon, who's been recommending this a few times over the last couple months, who in the past also recommended the movie Freaked. Admittedly, this is one of those movies I just have never seen. I think the only time that I actually heard it referenced in the horror community at all was in Horror Noir, which is an excellent documentary that jumps into the history of black horror and the role of African Americans in the film genre itself. When it comes to revenge movies, it's important to look at the motivations of the character who is seeking revenge. In this case, it's Sugar Hill, whose boyfriend was needlessly murdered. So immediately you're pissed off because it didn't make any sense at all. And then she just sparks this fire. She makes a deal with Baron Samedi and they just go after all these mobsters. And she is an absolute badass. She gets into cat fights, which is hilarious, by the way. Marki Bey is absolutely beautiful. She's rocking this cat suit and she just looks so cool and fits the role of someone who's about to just whoop everybody's ass because she's pissed off. And that's exactly what you get.
As strong as my love was, my hate is stronger.
Like I said, it's pretty straightforward. She just kind of finds each mobster and goes after them and eventually kills them. And she does it in a manner of ways. She cuts one of the guy's throats. She feeds another to a bunch of pigs. And then my least favorite, but probably the most effective, is just a coffin filled with snakes, and they just put the guy in it and close the lid, which is absolutely terrifying because my biggest fears are being buried alive and snakes. So to combine those, I was truly frightened. So there's really good variety in that. Another big aspect of this movie, obviously, is the zombies. And I think the zombies in this movie were just amazingly well done. Because they're not your standard zombie. The backstory is they are slaves that were shipped from Guinea to the United States, and perhaps they died on the ship and then they buried them in the swamps, and that is who was resurrected to help Sugar Hill. But along with the backstory is their look. They look really creepy because they're completely emotionless. They're just weird. And they have these silver eyes, and if you saw them coming at you, you'd be terrified because it's that same zombie mob mentality, but they just look creepier. They also have cobwebs all over them, they were preserved bodies as opposed to actually rotting zombie corpses. And they just have a really unique look to them. I also enjoyed the side story of Valentine, who is the detective who kind of knows what's going on. He suspects that Sugar is killing people, but he kind of likes her, but he's having reservations because he's wait, all of these mobsters are showing up dead and there's only one person with the proper motive here.
Come on, Valentine. I mean, do I really look like the mad killer type to you?
Hey, now that ain't no fair question.
And so he's just trying so hard to figure out if it's actually her or if it's somebody else. And he was just a great cop in general, the standard 70s cop. What's cool about this, and I guess it's because it's in the 70s, is it has a very 70s vibe. You have the upbeat music, the really cool wardrobes, we've got the perfectly round afros, and genuinely some of the funniest and best one-liners all the time.
I'm not accusing you, honk. I'm passing sentence, and the sentence is
death.
And as I think about it, I actually forgot one of my favorite moments was like a massage table. A mobster is going to get a massage, and instead Sugar Hill like had shown up to the massage place and said, hey, here's some money. If you can just like, you know, step aside and let me handle this, that would be great. And she brings in her zombies who start to like give the massage, but they're actually like tearing at his back and everything. That was just like a really funny moment, and I'd love to see something like that redone in modern times because it was amazing. As can be said for a lot of movies from the early 70s, I just don't really enjoy the pacing all that much because shots tend to drag for quite a long time. A great example of this is the zombies rising from the ground. They do that for such a long time that you're like, okay, this was cool when like we saw them starting to come up from the ground, then they could have cut to something else. But they continued to hold all of the shots for an abnormal amount of time. I can only imagine this is because of film back in the day was so expensive that you're more likely to use most of what you shoot at the time, because if you shot something, then you want to use what you shot. Whereas nowadays, we overshoot and we trim everything down, but there it was like, perhaps this isn't the case for specifically this movie, but it is the reason why I don't appreciate that many older like 60s and 70s movies, simply because they tend to keep in basically everything that they shoot. That's not to say I don't like 70s movies. Halloween 78 is my favorite movie of all time, and I love a lot of 70s movies, but there is something to be said about the pacing. And even when it comes to the story arc. So I did like Valentine and his constant quest to find out the truth of why these mobsters are dying, who's doing it, and him like talking with Sugar. It kind of just felt repetitive. He's constantly going from place to place to try and piece things together, but none of it really mattered because we spent a lot of time with Sugar anyway, so we already knew. And there wasn't the tension built up like, oh no, Valentine's gonna find out what's gonna happen. It didn't feel like there was gonna be that much weight when it came to his discovery because he liked her and we knew that there was going to be some kind of connection.
What brings you around today?
Business.
Used to be pleasure.
All in all, this was a pretty decent film. It's not necessarily something I would usually seek out, but I'm glad I watched it. I'm sure this would have been pretty creepy and scary for a lot of viewers back when it came out because the makeup was really well done. Everything was shot well, the lighting was great, and Marki Bey was just such a powerful and badass heroine. Baron Samedi looked cool. He was a little weird when he was wearing his overalls, but I liked him and I enjoyed the idea of the voodoo zombies and their look and just how all of the kills went down. That said, it did drag a bit in sections and I wasn't too sold on the detective chase aspect. I did like parts of it, but there was just no threat, it seemed. Not to mention that nearly no mobster put up a fight at all, and they just got their asses whooped and killed. So I think there could have been a little bit more struggle, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna give this 3.5 melon threats out of 5.
Now look, Pally, you got 1 day.
As always, thank you for watching. Like this video and comment below with your thoughts on the film if you've seen it. If you haven't and you do want to check it out, links are in the description. And if this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with everything Bloodbath and beyond.